So it feels like 2026 just started, but we're already about to close in on month one as January is just about wrapping up here. And I'm sure you guys know that we're pretty much in the season now for a Nintendo Direct, as there's pretty much always a Nintendo Direct that happens at the start of the year, where you really kind of get to see what Nintendo is planning and some of the major things that are going to be coming out throughout the year. And just today, Nate the Hate uploaded a new episode of his podcast going over some predictions and expectations that he has from Nintendo in 2026 and what they're going to do with the Switch 2 this year. And so if you don't know who Nate the Hate is, he is pretty much like the most accurate leaker that we have, especially when it comes to Nintendo stuff, because he's gotten so many things correct in terms of like big reveals that are going to happen for games, when Nintendo Directs are going to happen, and he even won an award from like the Reddit leaking forum for being leaker of the year for pretty much getting the exact Nintendo Switch 2 reveal correct, when at the start of last year, everybody, the whole internet was going crazy over when is Nintendo finally going to drop the reveal for this system, and Nate the Hate was the first person to tell us like it is going to be on this day, and he even described like what the reveal was going to be and how it was going to be more so just focused on the system and not really showing games or anything, and all of that turned out to be true. And that's why for me, Nate is like the only person where once he starts talking about Nintendo stuff, my ears are always going to be perked up ready to listen, because even though this video today, he's talking about like his predictions and things that he's kind of thinking is going to happen from Nintendo this year, there is some stuff that he's also kind of just heard in terms of like rumors and stuff that has also been sprinkled in here. So I'm pretty much just going to be summarizing all of that and giving like the big points. But if you do want to listen to the full podcast episode, I will of course have it linked below in the description, and you guys can go and check it out and listen to it for yourself. Alright, but the first thing that I want to talk about is the Nintendo Direct itself, as Nate did provide a little bit of information about that, and he was saying that from the stuff that he's heard, it seems like there is in fact going to be a Nintendo Direct, and it's going to be happening the first week of February, which from the time that I upload this video is literally just going to be next week, so it could be possible that a brand new Nintendo Direct is just a few days away, but he did say that he hasn't heard this from his best sources, so it's possible that it might not be the first week of February, maybe it could be like the second week, but he does think that sometime in early February we are in fact going to be seeing a Nintendo Direct. But he also did mention that he doesn't know the format of it. He thinks that more than likely it's probably going to be a general Nintendo Direct, just like a normal mainline Direct, but it's possible maybe they could still throw us like a partner showcase or something different, or like an indie world or something else, so you don't know for sure. So it's possible that the presentation could be something else and that Nintendo is saving like the big Nintendo Direct for another time, but he's basically heard that there is something happening within the first week of February. And then really we've got a lot of information here about some third-party stuff, where he was really saying that he feels like the third-party performance on Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be pretty powerful this year, and we're really going to see a lot of big games coming to the system, which I think is going to be awesome if that actually does end up being the case. I feel like having those big hitters on a Nintendo system is going to be very enticing for people, so that's really good. And the first thing that they talked about here really is Capcom, as Capcom does in fact have two big games that are going to be coming out on the Nintendo Switch 2. We of course have Resident Evil 9, which I think is going to be coming out just next month, so they could definitely show off a little bit more footage for that. I think there is going to be some new gameplay coming very soon, but also I think at the Game Awards they announced that Pragmata would also be coming to the Switch 2 as well, which is also another brand new Capcom game. So to have those big games, and I'm pretty sure both of them are available day one on the Nintendo Switch 2 alongside all of the other platforms, that is definitely huge. Nate also mentioned that he heard that Expedition 33 is going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 this year, and I feel like that this makes a lot of sense. Also, if you're somebody who is a Nintendo player only and you watch the Game Awards, I'm sure you saw this game pretty much sweep through all of the awards, winning Game of the Year, and you see everybody like gas up this game, talking about how it's amazing, it's the best thing ever, it's getting 10 out of 10s everywhere. But you can't really play it on a Nintendo system, but it's available on everything else with like PlayStation and Xbox and PC, so I'm sure even the developers want to capitalize on that and bring it to the Nintendo audience while everybody's still talking about it and while it's still hot, so that they can experience the game also. So yeah, I feel like this would be a pretty big announcement, so that's going to be pretty nice to see. He also mentioned that Atlas is going to be bringing Metaphor ReFantazio to the Nintendo Switch 2. I feel like this makes a lot of sense also. This was also a game that a lot of people really liked. It's a big Atlas game, it got a lot of praise, and it's available on, once again, everything but a Nintendo system. So to have this game, and Atlas has been pretty good with like providing stuff in terms of like Nintendo Switch 2. They brought Persona 3 Reload and stuff also, so I feel like bringing this game over makes a lot of sense too. Bethesda could be bringing some big games to the Switch 2 also. Nate mentioned Doom: The Dark Ages, which was the brand new Doom game that came out last year, and Doom has appeared on the Switch before with Doom Eternal and I think Doom 2016, both on the Nintendo Switch, so having this new Doom game coming to the Nintendo Switch 2, I feel like that makes a lot of sense. And then he also mentioned Starfield, which I know that's a pretty massive game, so to have a game like that available on the Switch 2, that would also be really big too, so we might actually see some of those big announcements at some point also. Now, just a few days ago was the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, which I'm sure some of you know is one of my favorite games of all time, and I was actually very happy to see the game do really well. It was actually selling out at a lot of stores where you couldn't buy it, and the game was doing really well. It was at the top of the eShop, so that was really nice, and it just made me happy to see a lot of people experiencing this game for the first time who never had the ability to play it before. But you might also know that Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually part of a remake trilogy of the original Final Fantasy VII, so this isn't actually the entire game, but only about a portion of it. And so we do have two other games with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and then also the third game, which hasn't even been revealed yet, but we know that all three of them are going to be coming to the Switch 2, and so we're still waiting now for that second game. And Nate did mention that it seems like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to be coming to the Switch 2 this year also. And actually, we even did have, I think one of the developers at Square Enix was saying that they had a version of Rebirth already running on the Switch 2. They just were trying to like tweak out the frame rates and make sure that the game is stable and smooth and stuff. But yeah, I do feel like this would of course make sense, and I feel like we could see that get revealed at some point too. And then moving on to some Xbox Studio games, I've got Indiana Jones here, as well as South of Midnight. I'm pretty sure both of these games were already announced to be coming to the Switch 2, so we're probably just going to get like an actual trailer and release dates and all of that. And I did hear that Indiana Jones was a pretty good game, so to have a big game like that on the Switch 2, that's going to be pretty nice. But I've also got Call of Duty here, and I know it's not like an Xbox Studios game, but because Microsoft does own like Activision Blizzard and everything, I just put Call of Duty here also, as they did basically sign like a deal that they would be bringing Call of Duty games to Nintendo platforms for like the next couple of years, and we didn't get the new release that came out last year with Black Ops 7 on the Switch 2, so people were wondering what's happening with that. And Nate was saying that apparently now it seems like a Call of Duty game is ready to come out on the Switch 2, so it probably is going to be Black Ops 7, which kind of sucks because I feel like nobody really kind of talks about that game or plays it as much because that kind of little spike that it had when it came out already kind of died down. So I feel like it would be better to just have like whatever this year's new Call of Duty game is, just have it launch alongside everything else with the Switch 2, but it might actually be like two Call of Duties this year, maybe with like first having Black Ops 7 and then the new game also. But yeah, either way, it seems like a Call of Duty game is finally going to be making its way back to Nintendo platforms this year also. And then he also touched a little bit on Ubisoft and just mentioned that maybe some of the games that they had during like the PS4 generation that never had the opportunity to come out on a Nintendo platform, those could be maybe now coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. So some examples that he gave was like The Division, and then also maybe like Rainbow Six Siege. So maybe those types of games now could also be making their way, and they could get announced in like a Nintendo Direct. And then of course, finally, the biggest third-party game of all time, and the million-dollar question for if this game could actually come to the Nintendo Switch 2. They did talk a little bit about Grand Theft Auto 6, and so Nate was saying that he actually did hear that apparently internally Rockstar had some type of build that they were testing on Nintendo Switch 2, but he has no information on whether or not that's actually going to go through and if this game could in fact come out on the Nintendo Switch 2. And really, if you guys want my thoughts on this, I feel like you should never say never, but this would absolutely be the most difficult port of all time to get on the Nintendo Switch 2. But at the same time, if they somehow make this work by a miracle, there can pretty much never be a third-party game that they could ever say is not possible to run on the Switch 2, because if they can get GTA 6, no game has any other excuse anymore. And I really do feel like it would need a lot of effort. Like, you might even need to call like the Nvidia engineers who design like the Switch 2's chip, and maybe have Nintendo developers help out, and then Rockstar, and like you need to have a lot of people working on it. But I feel like it's not impossible. But then again, are they really going to be willing to go through all of that while also being so busy working on it for other platforms and everything too? We don't really know. Maybe it's not going to come out like alongside everything else, but maybe like down the line, or maybe they'll even test out like GTA 5 and see if Nintendo's audience even cares about GTA on the Switch. But I feel like nevertheless, it's possible that maybe we could see somehow GTA 6 coming out on the Switch too, but they did talk about that and the possibility, and it would definitely be a very difficult port to do, but it's definitely not impossible. But now moving on to the actual Nintendo games and first-party announcements, really the first thing that we have here is something that I feel like everybody's just going to talk about until it finally happens, and that is of course a brand new 3D Mario game, as the last time that we had a 3D Mario title was during the Nintendo Switch's launch year in 2017 when Super Mario Odyssey came out, and if we don't see anything this year, it will literally be a decade since the last 3D Mario if it comes out at any point in 2027 or past that. So I feel like that's definitely just going to be always in the discussion for anything, is when are we going to see the next 3D Mario game. And I do feel like this year, the fact that they do have like the movie coming out with the Super Mario Galaxy movie, Nate did mention that it could be possible that we could in fact be seeing the next 3D Mario, so that could be a pretty big announcement to have inside of this Nintendo Direct, and that would be like the big system seller game of course to have for the Switch too. Now this year is also the anniversary of Zelda, and a lot of people have been wondering if Nintendo is going to do anything to celebrate it, and Nate did mention that he does think that there is going to be some Zelda content coming out in 2026, but it's really just a matter of what that turns out to be. So of course the thing that everybody talks about all the time is when are we getting the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD ports to the Switch, where those are pretty much like the only Wii U games that are pretty much left at this point, where everybody just really wants them on the Switch, wants to play them in HD. But we do have Wind Waker in terms of like the GameCube original, but a lot of people really want to have like the HD version with like the better textures and stuff, so maybe they could finally bring those to the Nintendo Switch. People also talk about remakes a lot, and especially one for Ocarina of Time, which I try not to buy into because Ocarina of Time is like a top 3 favorite video game of all time for me, and so if they ever revealed a remake of that game where you see it completely reimagined from the ground up with beautiful 4K visuals and using the power of the Switch 2, I would probably pass out during the reveal of that, so I don't even want to have the hope of that ever being real one day, but I know it always gets discussed, and Nate did say that the possibility of that is probably kind of unlikely because they would probably treat that as like an entire brand new 3D Zelda game, and it is really like Nintendo's most acclaimed game of all time, so they would probably need a lot of effort and wanting to make sure that that game is completely perfect, but maybe they could do a remake of some other Zelda game. But by far the most interesting thing that Nate did mention about Zelda is that he feels that the next 3D Zelda game might not actually be as far away as people think. And I think with how long it took for Breath of the Wild to release, and all the delays that happened with Tears of the Kingdom and everything too, I think everybody just kind of assumed that the next 3D Zelda game is just going to be many years away, and we're not going to see it for a long time with how long it takes for them to make these games. But he did mention how essentially Aonuma did say that they pretty much finished like a majority of the development of Tears of the Kingdom, and then just spent one entire year kind of polishing the game, and you don't need an entire development team to just polish up a game and get it ready for release. So the entire like 3D Zelda team in terms of like the main developers have pretty much been working on something now for 5 years if you think about it, and so about 5 years is definitely enough time now, give or take like 1 or 2 more years, for them to have something ready. So it's possible, he said, that we might even see like a little tease for that game, or maybe we could see a reveal, or that it could be announced, because it really might not be as far away as people think it is. Now Nate also did mention that he does think that there is going to be Mario Kart World DLC coming this year, and I feel like that this makes a lot of sense also. The game was pretty big when it came out with the Nintendo Switch 2, but ever since then the hype has kind of died down a little bit, and there hasn't really been a ton of people playing it, unless of course you love Mario Kart, but I do feel like we've only just kind of had little updates that add like extra little modes, like being able to see the music tracks and being able to turn off certain items and stuff, but we still kind of need like that one big update, whether it's pay paid or free, that really kind of changes the game and adds like new cards or new characters, new tracks, 200cc. There's a lot of options, so I do hope that we get like a big update to Mario Kart World this year. Now, Nate did talk more about Switch 2 editions, but also the possibility of definitive editions, and the example that he gave did make me kind of excited because he mentioned a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 definitive edition, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't think that they would ever really do something like that because you can already get Xenoblade 2 right now on the Switch 2, the game still looks pretty good and everything, so I feel like if they just re-release the game again for full price but as like a remastered definitive edition, it just really wouldn't make a lot of sense. But you guys know for the longest time I have been asking for them to just enhance all of the Xenoblade games on the Switch 2 using the system's power so that we can get better frame rates, better visuals, and better graphics. So at the very least, I hope that we get that, even if it's paid, and if they want to do something paid, maybe just have like a Switch 2 edition of the game that adds a couple of extra little features and stuff like that. But I don't really know if they would ever do like an actual like entire definitive edition or like a re-release for it. I just think that it wouldn't make a lot of sense because they would have the same name of the game twice. Like if they had Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and then also Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Definitive Edition, it would just kind of get way too confusing. But Nate did mention that it seems like that these Switch 2 editions could still be used to kind of like fill in the gaps of some of the months where they don't have any games, pretty much like the Wii U ports of this generation where Nintendo pretty much just kind of bundled up a Wii U game and had that released as like a full-fledged title as like one of their big releases during the Switch era, whereas in this case it'll just be like an upgraded version of some of the Switch games when they don't really have anything. And so he mentioned that games like Nintendo Switch Sports could be getting Switch 2 editions that add more sports and more features, so stuff like that, Nintendo could just be going back to some of their older titles and enhancing them a little bit more. So I'd be kind of for that if they don't have any other games and they just want to go back and update some older games. That would be really nice to see also. Now, a couple of months ago, Nate leaked that there was going to be a Kirby Planet Robobot port that was going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch, and that was a game from the 3DS, and he was saying that they were going to bring it to the original Switch, and it was just going to be made in HD, and it was just going to be really nice, maybe with a couple of extra little new features. And he did mention that he hasn't heard any update about the game, but that the game is still coming, so maybe that could be like one of the new Switch 1 games that could be inside of this Direct. And finally, I saved this topic for last because if we do get a Nintendo Direct, this isn't going to be in it, but it was still mentioned inside of Nate's podcast, and that is Generation 10 with Pokemon. So Nate did talk a little bit about how there is going to be a brand new generation of Pokemon this year, and how it's probably going to be inside of the Pokemon Presents that we always get on Pokemon Day at the end of February. But he mentioned some really interesting stuff, is that he's talking about some of the conversations that he's had with internal sources, and he was saying that from the conversations that he's been hearing, Generation 10 could actually be visually appealing, and that it might be the visual leap that Pokemon fans have been waiting for, because I think that we can all agree that when Pokemon games moved to the Nintendo Switch and we were all excited for home console Pokemon games, it just didn't really feel like it was kind of like that leap that we were waiting for. But Game Freak, it seemed like they kind of did struggle with making games on the Switch, but now that they've had so many years of experience with Generation 10 now and having access to the brand new power of the Switch 2, maybe this is finally going to be like that beautiful new generation, and it is going to be like the very important Generation X for them. So I really do hope that they make it amazing, and so this does give me a little bit of hope. But if any of you guys are wondering about Generation 10, I'm actually going to have an entire video about all the information that we know about the new generation of Pokemon, from all the leaks and the rumors and the internal sources and everything. So that's going to be coming out in early February, so hopefully you guys can look forward to that. But with that, I think that that is pretty much everything that was discussed inside of the Nate the Hate podcast in terms of all of the big stuff that they are expecting for Nintendo this year, and that it seems like it's going to be a pretty big year when it comes to third-party stuff, but also potentially first-party. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to click that like button and also subscribe to the channel as well. I'm definitely going to have some more videos talking about Nintendo stuff, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Comment down below and let me know what you think about all of this. Does this excite you now for what Nintendo's 2026 could be like? What are you really looking forward to? What do you want to see the most? Definitely be sure to comment down below and let me know. But if you don't have anything to say about it, just comment your favorite emoji down below for some engagement. I would really appreciate it. Go follow me on Twitter at Aero so you can be featured in videos, and also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.